Hi, it's Ileana at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show, and I have the beautiful Sarah Nash today with me. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Ileana. I'm just so pleased to be here. And as we were talking about earlier, I'm at my daughter's house. So the echo in her little studio, it's actually her guest room, is a little strange. So I feel like I'm shouting, but I'm not.
Well, it sounds beautiful. The space sounds good. And I love your Labyrinth t-shirt.
Yes, we're going to be talking about labyrinths today. I have a huge 33-foot one in my backyard. And I can send you some pictures so that you can, like, I don't know how you want to do that, but I've got some beautiful pictures of labyrinths. And I was a member of the it's actually the International Labyrinth Society, but I was their energy keeper. And so that essentially made me at that time sort of the one that was like the one that people came to for prayer requests, or we were sort of the ones that, as far as energy keepers go with the Labyrinth Society, we were the ones, you might say we were the priests or the priestesses of what was happening, because it's a very logical labyrinths. Well, the Labyrinth Society, there's two, well, there's actually a few, but there's Veritas, and they tend to be a bit more on the spiritual side. Not that TLS members aren't, but TLS members tend to be more scientific and more into the math behind labyrinths. And I'm a little bit of both. So the energy keeper was sort of the one that came in to be the balance for the Labyrinth Society. Now, I have a few things here. Now, this labyrinth here, I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
Yes.
I can see it.
This is what they call the medieval labyrinth. And this is what is found on the floor at Chartres in France. And so it's considered medieval because it is completely round. And then there's the classical labyrinth. To me, it reminds me of a brain. It's kind of just the shape of it. It's more of a, and I'm sitting here looking at one on my desktop right now. But we can send you some images of those too. But the classical labyrinth is the one that's the oldest. They've found that all over the world. And I discovered labyrinths on my 33rd birthday. I mean, I walked my first labyrinth on my 33rd birthday, and my girlfriend and I was living in Big Sur at the time. And my girlfriend, who I actually started the White Light Express with, Avis Latone, she and I drove to San Francisco, and we walked the labyrinth there at Grace Cathedral. By the way, you can't ever take a left turn in San Francisco. It's not possible. But I remember walking a labyrinth for the first time. I wanted something really mystical and magical to happen. And so these expectations that sometimes we have when we do these kinds of things, it's just, I began walking it. And of course, there's other people walking the path with you. And so the idea is either you step aside gently or they'll step aside gently. And occasionally you'll have eye contact. And I'm walking the labyrinth and I'm thinking, okay, nothing's happening. I don't know what I expected to happen, really. But I'll tell you what, when I got to the center, my whole world changed. I mean, literally it changed. I realized that the center is what we consistently work for over and over and over again. And for some people, the center can be finding that great parking spot, when you're doing your Christmas shopping or your holiday shopping or even just your grocery shopping. It can be, the center is that moment where you feel complete and whole, even just for that split second. And for me, I was standing there in the middle, And I had this like really kind of like, it was a little bit psychotic, I think. It was a little crazy. I had a thought that I never wanted to leave the center. I just wanted to stay there the whole time. And I had this like weird thing, like, I'm just going to put a tent here. And I'm like, oh, what happens, if you got to sleep or if you got to take a shower, you got to go to the bathroom. It was just a moment where it was just, and I realized that we consistently look for the center. I think I treat a lot of addicts in my well, they're not currently addicts, but the recovering addicts in my business. I have become certified as a trauma recovery specialist, which is kind of basically what I've always been as an intuitive reader, energy worker, and a recoverer. I'm recovered from my own trauma. So there are people who, an addict is consistently looking for that center. They want to find that center, whether that addiction is to food, to sex, to drugs, even religion, even a feeling. When I say a feeling, I mean that ecstatic feeling that happens when you are connected to oneness, or you have an encounter with what I call our far friends, those who live in other planets and other dimensions. So anyways, I've done enough talking. Go ahead, ask me some questions.
So what is a labyrinth and how do you construct it? How does it work?
Well, I'm going to kind of read off a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of cheating here.
Sure.
But if you go to labyrinthsociety.org, there is learning about labyrinths. So a labyrinth is a meandering path, as you can see. Mm-hmm. You can just you start, and it's often unicircle with a singular path leading to a center. It is not a maze. A lot of people mistake mazes for labyrinths. A maze will have dead ends. Like you can walk in, you can get lost in a maze. I've never had anybody get lost in a labyrinth yet. Sometimes you get turned around if the weather's bad, or if you're deep in meditation or what have you. But labyrinths are an ancient archetype dating back 4,000 years or more, actually longer. Used symbolically as a walking meditation, choreographed dance, or a site of rituals and ceremony, among other things. Labyrinths are tools for personal, psychological, and spiritual transformation. Also thought to enhance right brain activity. Labyrinths evoke metaphor, sacred geometry, spiritual pilgrimage, religious practice, mindfulness, environmental art, and community building. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Labyrinths are named by type and can be further identified by their number of circuits. Now, a circuit is counting from the center. You begin a labyrinth walk at the entrance, proceed along the path. Lines define the path and often maintain a consistent width. That's kind of important too. We want the paths to be about the same size. You don't want to have tiny paths and bigger paths, although some people tend to get, they're getting very creative out there now with labyrinths. But essentially, my labyrinth at home is a 7-circuit labyrinth. This would be considered an 11-circuit labyrinth. But they have actually connected people to, let's see, the EKG is for the heart, right? And then the EEG is the brain. Mm-hmm. So they've connected people to EEGs. And they've found that as people turn, the connections between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere become more connected. And so you become more balanced as you begin walking a labyrinth. I've often told some of my clients when they're out there, you can get started by for me, sometimes I'll walk mine and I'm thinking about my laundry or my shopping list, or maybe just something. And by the time I've got to the center, I've completely managed to move away from whatever it was that was causing me to become distressed or not focused. And I have a sensation and a feeling again that, okay, I've made it, I've accomplished something, I've done something. So go ahead, ask me more questions.
Oh, if it's okay with you, can I share one of my own experiences with a
Oh, I would
labyrinth?
love that. Yes, please.
So I think it was about September 2021. My friend and I went to a Native American park called Quamasin Park. It's like 20 minutes from my house. And we're walking there, and there's like two benches. It's in the forest with the trees. There's two benches, and there's a labyrinth with standing stones beside it.
Oh my gosh.
And each standing stone has a quote of wisdom. So, and my friend also is energy healer, and she knows a little bit about labyrinths. And she's like, start from the beginning and walk to the center, and then retrace your path exactly the way you started. And as I'm standing there in the center, I'm seeing Native American shamans drumming. I'm just going back to the past, because this park is Native American land. It's on that. So I'm seeing the mountains, I'm seeing like them drumming, and I'm seeing them making medicine bags, literally, with corn and with sage and tobacco, putting that in the medicine bags and teaching their kids what these little red baggies are, what they're for. They're prayer bags, they're wisdom bags, they're like manifestation wish bags to create something. And they put them by the stones or on the bench or somewhere near the labyrinth. And they're not to be moved. Like, people don't know what these prayer bags are for, and they move them around. So me and my friend spent like 15 minutes putting these baggies back around the labyrinth.
Oh, good. Well done. Yeah.
Yeah. So it took me back to the Native Americans and back to what the labyrinth represents, because to them, they did medicine wheels. They called them medicine wheels. We call them labyrinths. So this labyrinth was in honor of them, with the wisdom quotes on the standing stones.
That is, yeah, there is actually a bit of a difference between the typical medicine wheel and a labyrinth, although they do have a lot of similarities with regard to the rituals and the practices. And again, you know, a lot of the time, one of my favorite labyrinths is at the Dingley May Institute in Joshua Tree. And I've had some really incredible experiences there. And that was actually when I was a child. We had a memory of playing with Arcturians there. They would come in, and at least I think that's what somebody said, that they were Arcturians. So I didn't really, I thought they were more elementals or what have you. But when I was a child, I did an awful lot I spent a lot of time alone. And I was talking to my far friends. I thought they were, as I said, angels, elementals, what have you. And it wasn't until much later that a very profound healer and energy keeper, what I call an earth keeper, or somebody who's interested in or adept at those kinds of things. And she said, "You played with Arcturians." I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no.
So can labyrinths allow us to have these spiritual experiences with different beings, like the galactics, from people above from different planets? Like you said, you played with the Arcturians. Can people actually start making contact when they're in a labyrinth with these beings?
You know, I would say absolutely yes. In fact, it is a sacred and safe place for all beings of gentleness and kindness. The interesting thing, when as a rescue medium, and I didn't finish my initial thought with regard to the Dingley May Institute, they have their labyrinth at one side of their walking paths through the desert and in their property. And then on the other side, they have their medicine wheel. And the energy between them just flows like it's magical. It's beautiful. It's almost seamless. So that's the point that I was going to make with regard to that. Now, as a rescue medium, and my job's going to be obsolete here before too long. People who, the Catholics call it limbo, and other people call it the in-between, or perhaps the fourth dimension, or what have you. I have found through my work, especially with police departments and other government groups, and not government groups too, by the way, but there's people who have died violent deaths, committed suicide, or died, they were murdered that way. They tend to have a different energy in the passing, and that it can often keep them tethered to that dimension between here and there. At least that's been my experience, and that's what they call that. As I said, the Catholics call it like a limbo, the place that you go before you go to heaven or the resurrection or what have you. I have found that that sense of despair and loss can happen. Now, I do want to point out, with my experience with those who have died from suicide, they are met immediately with so much love and light. That's just been my experience. I'm not going to argue with others, but I know that because that kind of pain and that kind of what's happening inside is they do need divine intervention immediately from our friends and from those who are adept at that. So they're rescued.
Exactly. And I mean, people have often asked me, what do you feel about suicide? Like, what happens to people on the other side? And I say nothing bad happens to them. They go to heal. They go to the other side just like we do. There's no judgment in heaven. None. For how you left this earth. People ask me, what's the safest form of suicide? I'm like, well, don't kill yourself with a gun because that's painful. Don't hang yourself because you can live. You can actually survive and become paraplegic. I say, don't hang yourself. And people keep asking me, what's the most peaceful way to go to not cause pain for others? I'm like, just walk into a deep body of water like the ocean, and you'll go through a portal. Your body will float down. You'll be in water, because water gives life, and water also is a point of exit. And so when you go through the water, through deep water, sometimes you don't even die. You just end up somewhere else going through a water portal, or your soul passes on peacefully, and you're filled with warmth. You're filled with something, an experience. It's almost like a spiritual experience of walking into water and exiting that way.
You never quite thought of it like that, because the original baptism, being baptized, it's because one of my teachers was Aboriginal from Australia, and of course, and he had told me that one of the things is, he's like, we show each other our belly buttons, so we know that we've been born of a woman and we haven't been like cloned or what have you. And I'm really paraphrasing here, but he said, show us your teeth and show us your belly buttons. And the elements behind that was with regard to the baptism. You spend 9 months being, you're in water. And so that is essentially said, if you come from water, you go back to water. So that made me think of what you were saying. I'd never thought of it like that. My advice to people who are, when somebody asks me, what's the best way to go? I say, let's talk about this, because if you've got a plan and something's going on, let's talk about why you are, looking for that exit. And not because, I'm afraid or fearful. I'm interested in knowing how we can maybe sidestep taking yourself out of the equation a little bit too soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, some people do plan to suicide as their soul path. I mean,
and
cultures especially.
Yeah, and that's the last resort, really. Like, people tell me I don't have anyone, I don't have anything left anchoring me to this world, I'm all alone, like, what's the best way to leave? I'm like, you have to ask yourself, why are you planning to leave? What's behind it? And if you still, like, I worked with people, and people at the end say, I don't really want to die, I just wanted to know what's the best way if I ever need to take a peaceful exit. I'm like, walk into water. That's the only thing that came to me that was peaceful and safe. Warm water, not in the middle of winter when it's warm and sunny and summery and beautiful. I don't know. I have a connection with the oceans of the world because I had past lives as mermaids. So to me, water is just sacred in all its forms and vibrations.
You know, I just read something recently on, now I can't remember. Oh gosh, my brain. A group of mermaids is called a, what do they call them? A glimmer?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it is.
A pod.
Yeah, it was something. I collect cards on Neon Mob, and it was interesting because my husband, he just connected with me. He was like, hey, because he knew I was going to get ready to do this. He said, have you drawn any cards? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, actually I have. And so he sent me to a new cat tarot on Neon Mob. So with regard to, do you use any kind of symbols or any kind of oracles in your work? I mean, you are an oracle, so.
I use myself as the oracle when I do psychic readings and galactic soul readings. That what the Arcturians, Andromedans, Pleiadians, and the El race taught me is connect to the deep vibration of the soul within, connect here to people's souls, literally walk their soul path and give them a reading that way. I do tarot readings. I'm a trained tarot card reader, an oracle reader, but I access the soul vibration within just energetically. I don't draw cards for other people. So,
oh,
yeah.
Look, they're barking. Can you hear them?
Yeah, confirmation. Dogs
it's
always
because
are
I'm
smart.
right across the street from an elementary school, and of course the kids are getting out of school right now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna ignore them.
Okay. Puppies.
They're little pugs.
Yeah.
But so if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is share with you. I decided to pull a couple of cards, and I used the Wisdom of Avalon from Colette, and I told her that I was using, these cards like 10 years ago. I was like, hey, she was like, you really need to get your own deck. So I'm actually creating my own. Nice. But in the meantime, part of what I do is called cosmic triage. And so, for example, I mean, I have people call me attorneys, politicians, lawyers, what have you. My best friend, they'll say, okay, what number am I at right now? Cosmic triage, what it does is it takes all the numbers 1 through 10, that's a green light. 11 through 20, that's a yellow light. And 21 through 30, those are red lights. Now, green, yellow, red, none is better or worse than the others. It just kind of tells me where you are in your path. And I liked how you said that you pull it from their path, like you walk their path with them. Mm-hmm. See, I knew that's how you and I had that connection too, because it's like walking the labyrinth with a person. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what I was going to say earlier about being a rescue medium. If you walk a labyrinth with the departed soul who has not yet transferred itself into the higher dimensions, because for some reason, a lot of them have to do with less now than ever before. Back in 2020, I noticed the opening happening and mass exits of souls were leaving. It was almost as though they'd been trapped by the Phantom Matrix. And that's what I called it. Mm-hmm. And they began moving out, and we had this mass exodus of hundreds of thousands of souls. And I was actually with someone and I watched like 10,000 souls just like rise up and leave. And it gives me chills just thinking about it right now. But occasionally what happens is I will need to walk a labyrinth with someone who is still here, and they have fear there because they haven't moved on. I mean, that's how I know really truly when I'm talking with someone who's passed. If there's still fear there, or ego or pride, you know, then I know that they haven't really moved forward, because as you said, there's no judgment.
No.
There's no judgment. I mean, well, there is, but not, you know, the way that we think of judgment.
Not up there. Yeah. That
Right.
up there is just peace, forgiveness, and a chance for you to sometimes reevaluate what happened and to come to
Right?
terms with it and heal from it without any of the chaos that happens down here sometimes as a distraction.
And they get so afraid too, because of the indoctrination. And that's one of the things that I really am working. One of my friends wrote a book, Keith McIntosh. He wrote a book called Disorganized Christianity, and my husband actually helped edit it. But it's very focused on. And I'm sorry about the dog barking. I just knew that was going to happen.
Maybe let them in.
Well, no, there's all kinds of people that are walking around. That it's the elementary school.
Oh, okay.
I forgot. Otherwise, I would have. I feel like I should turn it around so everybody can see the kids walking. No, he's actually in the other room. Mm-hmm. But Walter is.
And yeah, when you mention dogs, they often, when we're talking about something, they'll start barking to acknowledge, oh yes, that is that way for sure.
You know, and that's what I was thinking too, because I'm like, wait a minute, the blinds in the living room are shut, and it's quiet. So yeah. Anyways, maybe he's picking up on something too. But so moving beyond, as you walk a labyrinth with someone who needs to move on, it's sort of like the Panama Canal. Every time you make a turn, it's like a lock. It goes down, and they turn around and they get closer and closer and closer to that sensation of love and light and just floating. I don't know. Have you had a near-death experience, or have you died?
Yeah, I remember dying like in Atlantis as a mermaid, just when Atlantis was falling, the 2 million year Atlantis was falling, everything going into the water. I hit a rock and broke my back and died as a mermaid. But I remember peace. I was in the ocean. I was helping to rescue people who were drowning. So I was in my mermaid form, and I rescued a lot of people, and I went deeper down to have a look, and I died at the bottom of the ocean, the Pacific.
Right. Well, that's really interesting. Thinking about dying from a previous lifetime. I meant as you are today in this form. If you've had
I've come close several times, but something always pulls me back, and the soul is so tough. It's like, you're not going anywhere. That's not your time. Right. You're close. You feel it. It's almost there, but I'm sorry. I'm like a cockroach. Even when it's my time to go, I never go, because something pulls me back. And
those are hardy beings, crocodiles and cockroaches.
Exactly. And I think of myself like a good old hardy cockroach. I mean, I'm the guardian for tethering North America to make sure nothing happens disaster-wise that's man-made, like the elites, for example. In 2017, they were supposed to create megaquakes with laser beam technology, and that came from the moon. And I stopped that, so they didn't shake us, because they were going to take down half of the Northwest.
When was that?
2017. 2 mega earthquakes with that stupid movie.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah.
The Andreas Fault. Remember that movie with The Rock in it? It was
Yeah.
And they had the shake simulators coming to the universities, because I worked in libraries, and they had this thing that would simulate. The simulator would simulate a 7 Richter scale earthquake. People are like, that's ridiculous. I'm not going into that thing. I'm like, boop, get that out of my reality. So I was shown signals of what was to come with that movie and that simulator coming to the university. I'm like, okay, Spirit said, remove that stuff in HARP, because it's HARP. That's in Alaska. That's where they sent the laser beam frequency weapons that were going to create these shakes. And Spirit said, can you take them out? Can you remove them? I'm like, sure, yes, I can. And I reinforced the tectonic plates. I reinforced everything so it wouldn't be shifting and moving, even on its own, like organically. Because if that was to happen and the big one was to come, it would be like a Richter 9 scale. I'm like, okay, let's cap that off until 2050 or something like that. I'm still capping it off, so it doesn't happen in our lifetime.
Yeah, and as long as it's, the organic quake, because mother is moving and shifting, and she wants to, but not because it's done, like as you said, if it's man-made, it's like, no, we don't get to do that. It's there's so many different things with regard to chemtrails and HARP, and I had some friends that had a small plantation in Hawaii, and I can't remember what they were growing. I'd have to ask Claude again. But they literally, because of everything that was being dumped through chemtrails, they lost their plantation. Nothing would grow. And they had a soil analysis done, and the only way that could have happened is through, because I call myself the world's most skeptical psychic. If it doesn't happen, right down to Bigfoot. Like, I didn't even believe in Bigfoot until I actually saw one. I was like, oh, how about that? So I mean, it's just so with chemtrails, I'm like, because I'm also very logical.
Same.
And a lot of what people call magic is just science. And our far friends have such advanced technology that we call that wizardry. And it's like, are we living in the dark ages still? I think so in some ways.
Yeah, we're not even.
But thank you for your service. Thank you.
We're not even one on the Kardashev scale of one civilization. We're 0 point something 5, or I mean, and people ask me about chemtrails too, and it's like, it's not surprising in Hawaii, because Hawaii is often targeted. It's the land of the Guardians, the originals, the Lemurians, the Atlanteans. So that land is constantly targeted by something. I tell people, okay, well, there's a concept of a greenhouse. Put all your plants, put all your food in a greenhouse, put a foundation of wood, whatever, cement, whatever you can, put a foundation under the ground, put your greenhouse, your glass greenhouse, and then put all your plants in organic soil in crates, something that's off the ground, so the chemtrails don't enter it. It's like a lot.
That's exactly what we did in our garden. You can go online to my Facebook page. If you go to youcanpicklethat.com, my husband and I have a website there. And you can also go to whitelightexpress.com or .org. That's my ministry. So we're gonna have to go pretty soon, because I can hear that pug, the baby. She's but can I share with you the 2 oracles that I pulled?
Yeah, and can I ask you, how does psychic reading work? How does that work? Because that's one of my questions.
Well, and it's sort of like the pro asking the pro. It's sitting in front of someone requires that you step aside from your own ego and your own pride. I cannot tell you how often I have sat with someone and spirit has given me information for that person. And let's say, for example, I'm working with someone who sits down in front of me and she says, listen, I need to know how to leave my husband. He's beating the crap out of me, or something like this, something really awful, or worse. Yeah, there is worse, but and I will receive information as I lay out the oracles that will say she needs to stay with him, she needs to do this, she should do that. And again, I tell people with regard to that, with cosmic triage, once we pull your numbers and we find out where you are, that's how I started with cosmic triage. Red light, green light, yellow light, I find out where you are in your path. So like I said, if I have politicians call me, or an attorney or something, and they'll say, listen, they don't have to tell me anything regarding the case or anything, or the script, if an actor calls or whatever. They just say, give me the numbers. I will pull the numbers and I'll say, oh, you're at number, well, for example, the number that I pulled for our session was number 22. So we were at a yellow light. or excuse me, we were at a red light because it's 1 through 10, 10 through 20, 21 through 30. I was numbers. Of course I'm. So it was a red light. It meant stop. And it's all about gentleness and diplomacy. And so I knew then that we needed to really kind of keep that, what we were going to talk about, as you said, about labyrinths and psychic readings, and kind of keep it in there, but you use gentleness and diplomacy. And because so many people tend to be so argumentative. But then I always find the crossing card. And the crossing card, so I always know, like, for example, if you had called me and said, Sarah, what do you think about this case? I didn't need to know anything. I would say I pulled a 22. I'd say, well, you're at a red light, Ileana. You need to sit down, ask this person some more questions before we move forward, or you move forward, because you've got a red light. Pretty soon that light's going to turn green. So it means you got to have all your ducks in a row. But it was crossed by forgiveness. And so the basically the two cards then were gentleness and diplomacy and forgiveness. And see, that's, I think, what you and I are very good at. And I've read some of your web presence is very gentle, very diplomatic. And, thank you for asking me to come be a guest with you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I was like, from what I got from today's interview, seek deeper life wisdom. Go deep in as much time as you're given. Ask as much intelligent questions as you can. That's what I got before our interview was to start. So it's like, you have the time that you have, ask the deep, meaningful questions, and be concise and precise. That's what I was kind of given. So that goes with that stop card. Think about what you're asking, because I know usually I have an hour with people and I'm like, okay, make sure your questions are all divinely guided and, ask deep wisdom questions right away. That's how all of my interviews go usually, but I'm connected to you and we sort of already chatted about what we would talk about. So it's like, what would you leave the audience as a wisdom-based fact for the day? What would you say to the audience? What's a wisdom fact?
Well, thank you for asking, because, and that's really beautiful. I wanted to share one thing. A lot of people have been asking, when are people going to wake up? That seems to, because it's sort of like, hurry and wake up, hurry, wake up. Here. It was like me watching my daughter's I call it my little grandpuggle. I kept waiting for her to wake up all day and she wouldn't. And so but one of my favorite astrologers, her name is Elsa, and I've known her for years. I'm not an astrologer. I spent all of my time and energy with the I Ching and Tarot. As a Jungian analyst, I signs and symbols, those, that was all about it. But she posted this, and I thought that you would really enjoy this, because I don't know, how do you feel about astrology?
I love astrology. I mean, my mother is ordering Joseph Polanski. Always, her head is always in the book of astrology. She only reads Joseph Polanski because his predictions for every astrological sign is correct. So I'm a bit of a student of astrology. I don't do charts for it though. So
right, yeah, we've got a bit much on it. We have to take the things that we can do and do as an earth keeper. What you do is, yeah. But so if I may, I'd like to read what Elsa said. She said, "Are you awake? Are you woke? Do you know what those terms mean? Are you sure? Does what you think they mean the same as what the person next to you think they mean? Which of those is an insult? And by the way, how can everyone except you be so stupid?" It's like, she says, "I'm not trying to piss you off. I am trying to illustrate the effect of Neptune in Pisces on information, AKA the Mercury ruled signs, Gemini and Virgo." I'm a Gemini. I'm pretty sure every single soul reading this has encountered this phenomena in some form to some degree. So when can we expect some relief, she says. She says, well, I don't know, of course, but I have some ideas. Neptune will turn direct in Pisces on December 1st, 2021. and it's going to be there at 20 degrees. It moves deeper into Pisces. People with planets in mutable signs at earlier degrees may gain clarity, but that's not the point. This could happen in a wave. And see, I was really seeing that wave. And now that I know that you're really into this water, I understand waves a little bit more too, that I was seeing earlier. She said, if so, this pattern could continue as Neptune moves through Pisces. But we also have Jupiter re-entering Pisces in December. Jupiter is at home in Pisces. This planet is associated with truth and may reveal it for the good of humanity. And so what do we know that what is the apocalypse? When people talk about the apocalypse, you know, the word apocalypse means the truth. It means the truth will be revealed. So I firmly believe, just as what is going to happen is that we have about 5 to 6 years of really just reorganizing. And as we move into 2027, everything is going to shift and change. I haven't seen what's going to happen yet, but I do know that something incredibly remarkable is happening in 2027. And it's like one of the things that I kept hearing. I hear things and I get these phrases. And it's before 911, I kept hearing all hell is breaking loose on the Lower East Side. And my girlfriend called me. She's like, oh my God, Sarah, they said that.
Oh, 911. The day before, I saw in my dreams World War I and II planes flying and crashing. So I was like, oh my God, I had goosebumps. I woke up in the middle of the night. I'm like, something's going to happen. Something's going to crash into something. But not in the way they portrayed in the media, that the planes crashed into the Twin Towers, because that's not how it happened. There was energy kinetic weapons involved in that.
Yeah.
And they blew up the towers. Like, but it was World War II and one planes. The symbol was planes crashing into something.
And it was smoke. Also the element, what I'm getting from that, if let's just say we knew each other back then, you said, oh my God, I had this dream. I would have said, okay, World War I and World War II planes, those are authentic planes crashing into, you know, essentially, I feel as though we entered in a period of World War III.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, they called it the Great War. The first one was the Great War because we weren't supposed to have any more wars. And then what had happened, and we had, you know, the Nazis, but and then again, nobody ever talks about Stalin because he won. And what he did was he took what you know, so man's inhumanity to man is what we really need to highlight and show each other. It isn't that this life or that life is worth more or less than, because there's this whole hierarchy. When I did my thesis in sociology, I wrote it about the hierarchy. I did it on Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, and how we put each other in positions, and how it's like, I really believe that by 2027, according to the human design also, that's not going to happen as much anymore. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to a time where people will be able to communicate, even if they don't necessarily have the same belief system or philosophy, that gentleness and diplomacy that you and I were talking about will, you know, be able to happen.
And I was getting 2021, 2025, 2021 is the end of this cycle of darkness, but we're in a transitional phase until 2025, the Lagrange phase, until all these phase one of the bioweapon that, you know, we got thrown at us, the C and the V, that's a bioweapon. It's a living bioweapon. Then
they've been planning that since 2015.
Yeah. And the second phase is like getting people rights and freedoms, you know, look at that, where that's heading. And the third one is, how many can we make of those Jabond things? By 2025 is like, it's an endpoint to that. Endpoint to that whole masterminded plan of that, to end that. It's the Lagrange point where it has to come to an end and go away. So cease and desist basically is 2025. This whole thing has to wrap up by 2025. That's what I was getting.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
was getting that as well. And that by 2027, I'm hoping, like, I don't have any real specific, we're looking at, what is that, 6 years from now?
mhm.
I'm going to be 61.
Oh, well, my passport will be expiring by 2028. So that's
Well,
the
there we
magic
go.
number. I was just looking at it because I need it for something. It's like, oh, well, something's gonna, and I got goosebumps. 2028 is gonna be a year of reclamation, a year of awakening, and a year of great discoveries.
Oh, I love it. See, we have a confirmation there on both ends. That's terrific. All right, that's good news.
Yeah,
I like that.
there's going to be some discovery. We're going to be hearing about, starting to hear about life on other planets. Like there's life, there's life, there's life. And then that life by something like 2040. Oh, there's humanoid ETs living on other planets. We're going to
Oh
introduce you to
gosh,
some.
didn't see that one coming, did we?
Well, I mean, they're talking about exoplanets. So many planets like Earth. That's the beginning disclosure. And there's like, oh, there's humanoid ETs, and here's life. Here you go.
That whole thing with regard to what Carl Sagan, I don't know if you know how much Carl Sagan really just, he kept so much on the lowdown.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he made some sort of recommendation with regard and got the go ahead to sort of, well, for all intents and purposes, dumb down the information that we had back in the 60s and 70s, because he said, quote unquote, we were not ready to accept certain truths. Like for exoplanets, like what, there was just a theory that there were going to be exoplanets out there, and now they've discovered what, over 400 right now, right? And my husband's really good with the math on that.
Well, I mean, I see things in percentages. So I see a lot of things, truth, untruth, yes, no, even that, questions. And so it's like 2040, yes, they're going to tell us that there's humanoid-like beings like us out there living on planets. And it's time to start learning about them, who they are, what they do. This is what we do in our readings already. We connect people to their galactic families and to their soul origins on other planets. I'm like, that's what I do in my daily life already. This is not shocking news. To some people, it will be. To the ones waking up by 2027, 2028. The woke period, that's the Renaissance woke period. Literally, that is
I think
there.
they're going to call us doctors of transdimensional communication in the future. I think it's going to be very important to really celebrate those of us who have been called fringe dwellers, the crazies, the lunatics. Oh, listen to Sarah talk about this, or say, of course you played with Arcturians when you were a kid. Woo. And so I allow people to have their quote unquote logical fear-based opinions, because that's, it keeps them safe. It keeps them safe, because I've always told people I can channel Sananda and change a diaper. You still have to take out the trash. We still have to, plug in our lamps and change light bulbs, because we can't do it with our minds yet.
Yeah, and I tell people nothing is crazy beyond the outer limits. There's nothing that's really limited based at all. So people that call me crazy, wacky, and beyond this world, they say that's not crazy. That's just the future. How it's going to be in the future events. That's not crazy.
And how
that's
it's been in the far past.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where the labyrinth comes in too. That's the circular walk. Mm-hmm. So it's those intersecting lines.
Yeah, well, anybody calls me crazy, weird, strange, I'm like, I just see the future. I'm a futurist. I see concepts of the future. So call me whatever you want. Call the kettle, whatever. It's the future.
Right. And again, though, why is it okay for people to talk and pray to an invisible man living in a cloud somewhere, or it's okay to talk to angels, but it's not okay. There's this fine line of what is and what isn't okay. And I suppose if I think a part of that has a lot to do with the fear, because some people who are clinically a little, not okay, those are the ones that are, saying that they got information to hurt people. And so those are the ones that you really have to sit with and find out what kind of their brain chemistry, because, my brain chemistry is a little schizodoodle. I hear and see things that aren't there. My physician knows that. And she's like, okay, as long as the voices in your head aren't telling you to go out and,
yeah, exactly,
drop bombs to yourself. So yeah, and I think that there is a very interesting way that we have to go with regard to that, and gentleness and diplomacy too, because people are very fearful. And so if we can do what we can do to help them through that place of pain.
Yeah, and people tell me, I get ideas, I hear voices in my head. I'm like, you're just talking to your creative higher self aspect. You're communicating with the higher self aspect of yourself. Hearing voices is not an issue, unless, of course, you're hearing something that's telling you to do some bad things. That's not good. That's not healthy when you hear that. And
exactly.
That's when it's time to get some help and get assessed. And I mean, this could be with a spiritual counselor, this could be with a psychic, anybody who can safely help you to deal with that and figure out what's causing it. Because again, brain chemistry does come into that, or it could be negative things influencing us, like negative beings, negative entities, demons, those things
and that's why
too.
it's so important for people to protect themselves. Can I read my protection prayer?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Hold on. I was going to share this with you. And I have this little guide that I put on my website for, we're celebrating 20 years of the ministry. The White Light Express is basically, I'll pray for you, you pray for me. And that's the power of positive focused intention.
Well, yeah, because you're an ordained Melchizedek priest.
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek, yes.
Yes, Melchizedek, it's fine. It's the Melchizedeks are just teachers, and they're all over the place. And Melchizedeks come into planets that are just really, again, to a civilization or a growing consciousness, and then they help teach. And they're all over. It's sort of like the Bene Gesserit that in Dune. The Melchizedeks, tend to be both male and female, though, not just, it's not based in any one or autonomous. They are considered a they. Quite often in a lot of places, they can be either or. So this one came from the Seven Sacred Flames by Aurelia Louise Jones. And I send these postcards out to all my clients, and I'll send one to you. Okay. I'll actually send you the PDF if you'd like.
Yes, please.
But this is for a force field of protection. And I really admonish people to at least say this a couple of times a week, if possible, if not every day. In the name of my beloved I Am Presence from the very heart of God, I invoke an invincible shaft of God's first ray of protection to be placed over me. Let it surround every cell, atom, and electron of my being, encapsulating me in an invincible force field of God's holy will. Let this shaft of sapphire blue light expand into my various bodies and all my chakras. Cut me free from anything that is less than the highest light within me. Let the blue flame of divine love guard my force field of protection daily and hourly. I know that I am, and I know that we are, absolutely protected at all time and in all places. And we express our deep gratitude for all assistance given unto us always. And I don't say amen, I say ma.
Beautiful, beautiful. And and I think also with the animals and the dogs barking, we can get so much confirmation and wisdom from them. And I've had people where their pet has gone meow or bark or woof in the middle of an interview when somebody's saying something important, and the animal connects to you and your soul wisdom. They're like, yes, I acknowledge, woof, meow. So
Yeah,
it's
well, I think most animals have words too, especially nowadays. Animals have a different consciousness though, which is why some people can still eat them. So there's that.
yeah, I prefer not to eat big things, or like I only eat turkey meat, so like poultry. I don't eat beef, cow. I don't eat pork. I just don't resonate with eating things that are big. I don't resonate with. I wish I could stop eating meat at all, but I need iron, so that's the only protein through the turkey stuff and the eggs. But
That's what they had to tell His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. He was very upset because his physician at one point said, listen, you're going to have to start eating something. So he ate poultry.
Mhm.
Just to get his health back up. So, but again, you know, animals have a different consciousness, and that's why it's like I was raised on a farm. So we had a different thing going on. I lived on a farm for a while as a child. I shouldn't say that I was raised on a farm because that's not entirely accurate. But anyways, I have really enjoyed speaking with you, but I'm going to have to go because I can tell my little baby Buggle.
She's awakening. She's
awakening. Speaking of being awake.
She's heard, like you were watching her all day. She's sleeping. And when you start talking about very important spiritual things in the interview, she's like, oh, hello, it's time to wake up, tune in and listen to what she's saying, because this is vibrationally so high. I must tune in and have a listen and say, agreed, woof, or, you know, what dogs say. So I think she's.
Would you like me to go get her?
Oh, it's okay. No, it's fine.
Okay.
But she's like, yes, I'm awake. I'm woof. I'm confirming this. What you're saying is wisdom based. I'm confirm. I will confirm, and I will say woof or whine or whistle or whatever.
Right.
Confirmation is life's greatest lesson, and life's creation is life's greatest imagination.
Absolutely.
And she's very imaginative and creative little pug.
Yes. We call her the little Wendigo.
There you go.
Her name is Wendy. She's our little Wendigo.
Wendigo. Beautiful. When the wind whistles, she goes and flies with the wind.
There you go.
Exactly. Beautiful. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. And you know, if you have more questions or if people want to know more, they can reach me at thewhitelightexpress.com or .org. And there we go.
Beautiful. See you soon.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.